I call this Joint Services Committee meeting to order, and I require an adoption agenda for today, March the 14th, 2024.
So
moved by Councillor Gibson and seconded by Councillor Davies. Councillor Davies is online. He's the other, he's here from Mission. So we only have two of us from Mission today, just so you know. All those in favor of the agenda, thank you. Next item on the agenda is item 3, and that's the adoption of the minutes of November 16th and January 18th. Can I have a mover? Moved by Councillor Mayor Siemens, seconded by Councillor Gibson. All those in favor? Thank you. Okay, now we'll move on to item 6.1. The first item on the agenda is the draft biosolids master plan. I'm going to get Nathan to give us introductions. Thank you, Nathan.
Great, thank you, Chair. This item is from the City's Director of Environmental Services, the draft biosolids master plan. This is an update on an initiative recommended in the 2018 wastewater master plan, reviewing options for the long-term sustainability of the James Treatment Plant biosolids program. And staff are joined today by Mr. Tom Robinson from Associated Engineering, who carried out this work. And I'll now turn it over to Ms. Jones to walk the committee through the presentation.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Chair. Yeah, so we're here to introduce the draft biosolids master plan for your feedback. In the agenda today, we will talk about the phases and the timelines of this project, the current treatment system, the projections around growth, the methodology to build this plan, the issues and opportunities identified, and the next steps outlined. So the purpose is to summarize the plan, present potential financial implications that the plan would bring forward, and answer questions and gather feedback from this commission. So this slide is meant to show the context of how both cities of Abbotsford and Mission corporate strategic plans, OCPs, are aligned with this master plan and how this work flows through financial plans into implementation. A little bit more background, the wastewater master plan that was completed in 2018 recommended the work specifically around biosolids to study options around capacity, compliance, trends, and explore alternative end uses for the biosolids produced at the plant. Now, in terms of biosolids and what they are, I just want to quickly highlight that from the wastewater treatment process, there are basically two outputs. The treated water, you can see at the top left here, through the treatment process, and then there's a solids product that is treated separately. And this is going to be the topic of our conversation here. The solids treatments, the watering, and eventually the application of the uses that we're looking at. A little bit more context on the regulation of these biosolids. The plant is subject to both provincial and federal regulations. Biosolids specifically are the subject of the organic matter recycling regulation, that it's provincial in nature, and that is our guiding principle in how to treat these biosolids and how to manage them. A little bit more about OMAR, or the Organic Matter Regulation, is the provincial regulation governing the production, distribution, storage, sale, and use of biosolids and compost in BC. This regulation defines biosolids as Class A or Class B based on the treatment level, and that's going to be part of the conversation today. So in terms of what biosolids are, they are the stabilized product that are recovered at the end of the wastewater treatment plant. As I showed you, you can see in the image there how they look like broadly, and it's important to manage them because of the biological components in biosolids. So this is why they're regulated. In terms of this master plan, we have staged the work in several phases. And the work started in 2022 with background review and data assessment. There was a period of analysis and evaluation of technologies that took place between spring and fall of 2023. And today we're here with the outcomes of that for feedback, bringing it all together to talk about it and hear from you on your thoughts. And for this slide and a few more, I would like to invite Tom Robinson to the podium, please.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, everybody else. I'm going to run through a few slides here now for you. So this slide here gives us an overview of the existing biosolids management scheme at the James wastewater treatment plant. Top line, from 2000 to 2020, the sludge digestion system included a pre-pasteurization process. And the purpose of that was to produce Class A biosolids. We'll talk about that later. The pre-pasteurization process actually became very corroded after a period of time, and in March 2020, it was taken offline. Repair costs were estimated at $1.4 million. Since 2020, the next line down, James has been producing Class B biosolids, and this has turned out not to be a bad thing because there's been no need to change the third-party management and disposal of biosolids. Because in fact, Class B and Class A are handled in the same way in this case. And you enjoyed lower operational costs without having to operate the pre-pasteurization system. Population growth means that sludge produced will continue to grow, and this has ramifications for the existing digesters. There are 3 digesters at James. Digester 3 is the largest, and it's approximately the same size as the total of digesters 1 and 2. The blue line shows how sludge production will grow in proportion to the population in the James catchment. And if you look at the upper dashed line, you can see that for areas to the left where the blue line is below the dashed line, which represents the total digester capacity, life should be good, that things should operate as they're designed and intended to do. But when the blue line reaches the dashed line below, in other words, when you have to take digester number 3 out of service for cleaning, which is the plan in 2026, your digester capacity with 1 and 2 only is the lower dotted line. And as you can see, that red dot that corresponds to 2026 is putting you at the limit of your digestion capacity. You won't have buffer and storage volume available in the event of a digester upset, and this will make day-to-day operations more challenging, and thus the need, and why we're talking about today, a biosolids master plan. The biosolids master plan reviews and identifies all existing and new technologies and options, and it makes a plan for the future. Associated Engineering used a triple bottom line methodology. If you're familiar with that, it's a structured decision-making process that evaluates the fiscal, environmental, and societal impacts in an unbiased and transparent way. And in the methodology that we used, we also included a consideration of risk, which many TBL methodologies don't. And why would we have included risk? Such things as what if the regulations were to change after we used this process to make a good decision, only to find that now we had to revisit and do it again. The TBL process, and this figure doesn't give it really full justice, but I'll run through it as though it did. It starts by identifying in the top all possible opportunities, technologies, systems that could be brought to bear for the biosolids treatment. These were reviewed together with city staff, and any of those that were deemed to have had a fatal flaw or be unapplicable for Abbotsford in any way were dropped from further consideration. So we call that a pass-fail analysis. The remaining technologies, as we get down to what's called the shortlist scenarios there, these were reviewed in a lot more detail with city staff and specifically put into a framework that evaluates financial, economic, and social impacts. This was where the bulk of the work took place. City staff provided key input into this evaluation by weighting the triple bottom line criteria and risk criteria according to the city's needs and priorities. And when the city's weightings were combined with the technology scoring that was done by Associated Engineering, and the calculations are done, and you have lots of discussions, you get an output that ranks the scenarios that you have developed in order of, let's say, their overall suitability. So the beauty of this process is that the outcome of the TBL plus risk analysis is a biosolids master plan that's understandable, transparent, and defensible. And that's in reality what happened in this exercise. And it's the outcome of that that's the basis of the recommendation being brought forward. The next slide just sort of shows you how the rest of this short presentation will be organized. We'll be talking about regulatory and end use, digester capacity needs, treatment technologies, biosolids management, regulatory and end use. Class A and Class B biosolids have been already briefly discussed. There are a variety of end products. There's also an end product, just for completeness, called biochar, which is like a charcoal product. You could say it's even better than Class A because it would be suitable for almost the widest possible reuses. Not surprisingly, it comes at a premium price to construct and to operate. But with no significant benefit for Class A at this time, or in the foreseeable future, the Biosolids Master Plan has identified that Class B is the most appropriate objective for this foreseeable future. But ideally, we would want to implement a system that could be easily upgraded to Class A in the future if that became needed, and not by scrapping a lot of what was done, but by simply adding on to it in a resilient sort of design fashion. Now back to the challenge of cleaning an existing digester and the capacity limitations. As I demonstrated earlier, your planned digester cleaning program in 2026 will be challenging, and the next cycle in 10 years will be even more challenging, and special measures would likely be required to undertake that. So there's a relatively urgent need to increase digester capacity. And the effort that we did here looked at the merits of adding a fourth digester. However, there's another way to increase digester capacity, and it's a process called recuperative thickening. And this would involve upgrading and reconfiguring the existing digesters instead of building a fourth. Recuperative thickening. So this is a process that takes the digested biosolids that are coming out of digester 3. You can look at that as the domed shape of vessel on the left. It puts it through a thickening process, and then it recycles a portion of it back into the front of digester 3. And what this does is it removes free liquid, and it brings the biosolids from about 1.5% solids to about 5% solids. And when those are recycled back and mixed with incoming sludge and fed back into digester 3 again, there's a sort of a magical thing that happens. The process achieves a higher rate of sludge reduction per cubic meter of digester. Or to put it another way, it increases the capacity of your existing digesters. In fact, it should make the addition of a fourth digester something that doesn't need to be considered for maybe around 20 years. It also increases the biogas generation, which gives you options in terms of upgrading into renewable natural gas. So what is required to implement recuperative thickening? You will need a thickening process, likely what's called a rotating drum thickener. It's a fairly low-tech, straightforward piece of equipment, not particularly large and not difficult to operate. You would need pumps and piping, obviously, to move this material around. But most significantly, you would need upgrades and a replacement of the existing digester mixing systems that would be required to handle the thicker sludge. The existing mixing systems would not be capable of doing that. And this is a significant undertaking. Where would recuperative thickening fit on the James site? Some digestion treatment technologies require more space than others. A new fourth digester would be relatively large, and it would have to be located most likely in the area of the existing lagoons, where it would need extensive ground preparation for all of the things we're dealing with on the site: seismic, sea level rise, flood protection, etc. By contrast, recuperative thickening requires a relatively small footprint and a relatively light structure. It could be constructed in the red space that you see on the screen. It could fit there. The capital cost for recuperative thickening is estimated at 23 million, plus 30% minus 10%. And so that is the outcome of the biosolids master plan work that we've done, is to take the recuperative thickening approach to the next stage, do a more detailed look at feasibility and confirmation, and then a preliminary design and consideration of how the recuperative thickening could be integrated into your larger overall James wastewater master plan. Lastly, and somewhat disconnected from the rest of the effort, there is a need on site to have a weigh scale for biosolids. Presently, you have no way to weigh the quantity of biosolids that you're producing. Abbotsford relies on third-party biosolids haulers to weigh that and to report back. And what you really need is accurate weights yourself for capital planning, for managing hauling strategies, and for contracts and cost. So the biosolids master plan includes a recommendation for a new weigh scale.
Jumping in again.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Tom. So the next slide, it's I'm basically just going to summarize in numbers what the plan is proposing in terms of next steps or implications. So the recuperative thickening pre-design, staff are estimating approximately $450,000 for that work to investigate it further and really see the applicability for the plant. Then the waste scale is approximately $500,000. And it's worth highlighting that those first two items are already within existing capital plans or captured in the capital plan. So it's not really impacting budgets further. And then should this be proven to be a viable option, then the recuperative thickening, as mentioned, would have an impact of approximately $23 million with those caveats there on the estimate level. And again, that would be proposed only if the first step of the pre-design and investigation phase clear that aspect as viable. In terms of next steps, we went to UMC in February, we incorporated that feedback, but we're here today to receive your thoughts on these proposals and incorporate your feedback and come back with a final product for endorsement in May. And with that, I'd like to open the room for questions.
Thank you, Louise Jones, and Mr. Robinson, for your presentation. Appreciate that. Okay, do we have any questions? Go ahead, Councillor Gibson.
Yeah, thank you. That's the first time I wrote the word magical. That's the first time the word magical has been used in this meeting. So, couple of queries. Is there something to you, Mr. Chairman? Is there some things that we can do to decrease the inflow or the input into the system? Are there things that we can do using technology with our industries or our residential use? Are there things that we can do to reduce the input into the system? Are there innovations that this committee could look at?
Through the chair, I would like to invite Director Stella Chu. Is that?
I can speak to it at a high level.
Okay.
Come a little closer.
Through the chair to Councillor Gibson. So the projection right now is based on, it was done based on the OCPs that were completed in 2016. Subsequently, these projections were taken out from the 2018 master plans. So they were the same projections. In terms of flow and load reductions, innovations, largely they have been based on population growth for residential. For industries, that might be one area that we could spend some time on doing further source control and initiating dialogues with the industries so that they can look at reducing organic load that are produced from those industries, processing plants. And that would be one of the ways that I believe staff can, the source control area can potentially take on. In terms of technologies, I'm not quite sure if there are any innovations out there that would sort of help with that. I may want to defer back to our consultant Tom Robinson on that. Mostly the technologies these days have been focused on treatment, making the environment better. But in terms of reducing loading, I think like the thickening system would be one of the technologies that are mature, I guess, to date that could help with that. There might be other innovations that are still in the research and development stage that we're not fully aware of, and we may not be in a position to sort of help move that forward as those would be in the early adoption stage.
Thank you.
I have another quick question.
Go ahead, Councillor Gibson.
This sludge, this material, and remember, I don't have the vocabulary that you guys have, so if I speak in simple terms, I am simple Simon here. But my query is, you get the material, the sludge from the system. Is there anything that would be of value if combined with something else? In other words, you've got this stuff that's really, you've got the two levels of A and B biosolids, as I understand it. Is there something you can do to combine that with maybe some commercial product, or I'm just bringing sawdust or something else that adds value to it that otherwise we wouldn't engage if we only looked at it ourselves? Is there something beyond our realm of responsibility that can add value to this product, make it more marketable? And that's kind of an open question.
Through the chair, Joe, our manager of environmental services, and just to offer some background, when the city used to produce Class A biosolids, and this precedes me, so I might look to you to add more detail to this. The city used to market the Class A biosolids. There was an independent venture to do that, and at this time, just given the amount of resources that takes, and also the regulatory environment, we're proposing to stay with Class B biosolids, which can't be. The applications are more regulated and need to be applied in land. So that's the approach we're taking. Is it possible, to answer your question? Yes. Has it been done in Abbotsford? Yes. At this moment, we are taking an approach to safeguard capacity and work towards extending the life of the asset and producing the biosolids on a Class B level. That answers your question?
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Worthington.
So recuperative thickening technology, that's new to us, but I'm sure it's not new in the world of biosolid management. So can you tell me a little bit more about how widespread that is and some examples maybe? Or obviously you're going to say it's a success, so just tell me why I should feel good about it.
Sure. Through the chair, I am going to invite back Mr. Robinson here to help us with this answer. So can you summarize some of the findings?
Yeah, sure. I'm learning to expect good questions from this group. It is not quite as widely spread used as you're suggesting, but I think in the years to come that will change because there are cities as you who are facing this challenge. And it is a way to get more capacity out of your existing assets. I think one facility that we're keen to learn more about is down in the San Francisco area, because I think it would be similar to yours in terms of size and scale. I can't tell you how many there are in North America, but we did look at this one time. There's a handful, but there's a number that are sort of planned to go ahead.
Thank you, Councilor Workington.
Okay, so,
If I may add a little bit
Yes.
before we continue on. So that is why we're proposing that phased approach, where we're gonna go into a detailed design and do further feasibility analysis before going into design, just doing a more detailed feasibility analysis on this technology. So we're still very much on a high level. This is a strategy proposal that will require further investigation. And that's why the proposal is not to put this financial implication on a capital plan just yet. So I hope that kind of sets where we're at.
would it be fair to say you think you have confidence in it, but you want to make sure that we have confidence in it based on what's been done out there?
That is fair to say, absolutely.
Okay, good, thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else? Councilor Davies, you have a question at all?
Actually, I do. Thank you, Chair.
Go ahead,
So
go
just to get to the next stage, to get to the more detailed design, that's the $450,000 charge. Is that correct?
Through the chair.
Yes.
Correct.
Yes, it is correct. We heard that, Councilor Davies.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I do have a question. Thank you for the presentation, but I did want to thank you because you've answered 3 of my questions, and Councilor Workington, just one of my questions was, has there been some proven technology, has it been proven elsewhere? My only question is above, and the changing regulatory environment could be a factor, and you've covered that. You also covered looking at a fourth digester. That was one of the questions I had. My only other question is the timeline here. You've indicated the year 2026, we could be in a bit of a crunch time and having to take the number 3 out in order for work. Is it a concern, the timeline, and try to bring forward this kind of new technology? Is there a concern with what we might run into a problem 2026 that was indicated in the report?
Through the chair, yes, I'd like to pass this over to our expert. Director.
Thank you, Chair, for the question. So right now, we have in our plan to take 1 digester offline each year, starting with the smaller one, and then another smaller one next year, and the third one in 2026. That's our planned timeline. As we are able to take these digesters and clean them, some capacity will be restored in the system through those cleaning. And staff are looking at initiating the feasibility study as soon as possible, so that we can not just look at the recuperative thickening system mentioned here as the only option, but we will also look at what are the options available that may fit with our timeline and maybe is more cost effective to serve the purposes of what we need here to provide that short-term capacity as well as the medium-term capacity.
Thank you. My only other question is in regards to, it indicated in the report about what is the, this is land use, we're taking the product, I believe the product up to now has gone up to Cache Creek, the waste is the solid waste, am I correct? It's gone outside our immediate community. Is that still where this would be going, the product, or is that something we need to do further research on because the volume is going to increase over time?
Great question, Chair. So where the biosolids go, it's the same class of biosolids that we're currently producing.
Yeah.
And so that wouldn't change. So it's the same biosolid type. It's where they go. It depends on the contract with the contracts that we undertake. And if my timeline is correct, we will be going out to contract again, to the market again at the end of this year. So it might change at that time, but this is just a regular process of our procurement cycle.
Good, thank you. And you've indicated in the report, just one last question. You didn't get in the report that we've taken into account where this could be located, but we're also doing an upgrade in the facility in general between now and 2040. So this will fit in with what we're doing. Like I know that we talked about, as we're gradually upgrading our overall James Sewer Plant facility. As things age out, we're going to do upgrades. this all fits in sync with what we're doing with the money we've indicated we need to invest between now, I think it's 2040, am I correct, Mr. Corning?
Through the chair, that's correct. And we will be revisiting the master plan again later this year or next year, along with other master plans for the city.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you very much for answering the questions. Or is there any other questions? Councilor Gibson, one question.
Super quick one, I really appreciate it. I heard the expression used by somebody here that said there may be other options. Right? That was said a moment ago. Well, if that's true, and I'm not trying to pick on words, we're spending $450,000 on one option. Does that to some extent preclude, given the budget, that's a big deal, does that preclude other options? In other words, why are we, just to clarify in my mind, why are we spending $450 on one option when there could be other options? That's my question.
Through the chair, see the.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Councilor Gibson. So the $450,000 is more like a study of feasibility study at this point. It's going to look at a number of different things. First, doing some background review, and then looking at recuperative thickening as one of the options, but also other options that might be available with. And then we'll do another cost estimate and then look at the timing and see which option will be best suited to our need so that we can take the digester number 3 offline in 2026.
Okay, because that's good, through you, Mr. Chairman, because on here it says recuperative thickening, pre-designed 450. So what you're really saying, that is one option, but there are others that are going to be examined in conjunction with that one. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so thank you very much for your presentations, and you will get back to us in May with a more defined, obviously have a motion at that time regards capital investment. Thank you again for all of that. We'll now move on to item 6.2, and we have the bi-monthly water report, and Jamie Austin is going to give us an update where we're at with the water report.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, committee members and fellow staff who's in mission joining us. Today, I'm pleased to present the bi-monthly water report for January and February of 2024. To begin with, all drinking water quality results for this period met regulatory requirements. If I could get you to look at page 31, Appendix A, this looks at our daily demands. We did have a peak flow of 73 megaliters. That was back on January 22nd. Moving along to Appendix C, that's page 33. It shows our average monthly demands. You can see we're up a little bit. January was up 4.2% in comparison to the same time last year, and February was up roughly the same. February wasn't closed out by the time this report came due. It was at 4.4%, so a similar trend we're seeing. Moving on to Appendix E and F on page 35 and 36, lake levels. Dixon is at 100% at the time of this report. I checked it today, and we're still at 100%. Next page, Canal. Time of this report, it's, I believe, 67. Not fabulous, but I'm happy to report as of this morning, we're actually at 83%. So the last few rainfalls we've had have lifted the lake levels quite a bit, so we're feeling pretty comfortable what we're seeing as far as trends go. Next point of interest would be Appendix G on page 37. This shows the snowpack levels. Again, at the time of the report, March numbers weren't in. As of March 1st, I should go to February 1st, we were at 71%. Moving a month later, Dixon, we were at 75%. And then looking this morning, mid-March, we're at 81%. So we are below historical average, but we are moving along with the average as it moves along. So it's an okay number. It's not fabulous, but it's certainly much better than the way the season started out. And that concludes the report. If there are any questions for me.
Yes, okay, is there any questions from anybody? All have questions? Okay, I have. Anybody? Okay, go ahead, Councilor Gibson.
Just a general comment. I don't know whether you accept this, Mr. Chairman, but my wife, I wonder why I'm starting on this. My wife went out in New York City recently for vacation, and our tour guide on the first day was a retired Columbia University professor, lived in New York his entire life. So I asked him, where do you guys get your water from here? Because I was kind of interested. He'd been there his whole life. What do you think his answer was? I don't know. I don't know. And it made me think about us, what we're doing here. And what I wanted to just suggest, and this is kind of a little bit out of context, thank you for your indulgence, Mr. Chairman. I'm wondering if we should make more effort to communicate with our citizens where we get the water from and how precious it is, how we're stewards of the water for our citizens. Because when I thought to myself, my wife and I went back to a hotel, I said, the guy doesn't know where we get our water from in New York City, and he's lived here his whole life. My guess is probably 90% of the people in Abbotsford have no idea where we get our water from. Why is that important? Because if they know that, they understand what we're doing here and all the staff, all the fabulous work that staff do and we do in our committee. They're going to appreciate it more. So when it comes time to be stewardly with that water, they're going to be more empathetic and more understanding. Those are my comments. Thank
Okay,
you.
appreciate your comments, and I believe that there is, both cities have messages on the web pages, the city web page, so do not be going services to water services. But also, I think that when we do our water conservation program, I think there's a lot done there to let people understand where we get a water source. I've seen it many times promoted, and you can go, I think we have staff come out to various events in Mission. That's an indicator. They have usually a chart there indicating where water sources are. So it's done. It's just obviously, I think people just need to pay attention. We do more of that. So thank you. No other questions? Okay, thank you. We'll now move on, Jamie Austin, to our bi-monthly Gene Plant bi-monthly report.
Okay, thank you again, Chair. Pleased to present the bi-monthly report for January and February 2024. Plant met all regulatory parameters for this reporting period. There is one exception, though. We had an LC50 toxicity test that failed on February 7th. Requirements for us to notify the Ministry of Environment, which we did immediately upon learning the results, and resample, which was done on February 16th, and we passed, so there are no further additional sampling or any other requirements beyond that single test.
Thank you very much for that report.
Just a couple more tiny things.
Go ahead.
It's usually the fast one. The only other thing to report on, really, a couple things, just the amount of biosolids that left the facility. We're at 76 tons. And then finally, Appendix E, we always look at on page 48. This just shows the toxicity curve. And February's result is in the circle there. Reflection of ammonia and pH on discharge, and you can see we're in a good spot there. So that does conclude the report. And if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Sean. Go ahead. Thank you. Mr. Council Worthington, I apologize. Go ahead.
The pill toxicity test tend to not get too excited about one-offs, but anything going on there that's any sort of a longer-term concern that will be behind it?
No, thank you. Through the chair. Yeah, so, I use the acronym LC50, lethal concentration 50. It's a small test where we use the indicator organism as a pass-fail. If more than 50% are not viable, it's a fail. We had 6 out of 10, hence the failure. In my time, 6 years here, I've never seen this happen before. It's the first time, and we do this test, it's at least monthly. So we don't see it as an issue. It appears to be a one-off. So and that's why you see me not too excited about the result and the fact that the resample came back well, and it has been ever since. I'm quite comfortable with it.
Could have been a false positive.
Quite possibly, there's all sorts of things, I guess, with laboratory tests. Could the indicator organisms have been weaker to begin with their biological, what did we get in that sample?
Good, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. We'll now move on. Thank you for the report. We'll now move on to page 48, Regional Water Sewer 2024 Operational Revenue Update. And Jamie Austin, you can do that as well.
Yes, thank you. Thank you again, Chair. So the purpose of this report is to provide the 2024 regional sewer and water revenue and cost operational percentages for Abbotsford and Mission. I do this every year around this time to update what the costs are going to be for each municipality. These costs are based on how much water was consumed by each municipality as well as how much sewage was produced by each. So to look back on 2023 for sewer split, Abbotsford was responsible for 81.54%. Last year, we were 81.33%, so very similar. Contrasting with that, Mission was at 18.46% in 2023. Previous year, 18.67%, so not a whole lot of change in the split at all. Looking at 2023 water conveyance, similar to what we saw previous year, Abbotsford was 78.5%, previous year 78.2%, Mission 21.5% for 2023, previous year 21.8%. So to drill into the numbers a bit, page 51, Appendix A has more of the data where this is derived from. To look at sewer overall usage in Abbotsford, we actually went up slightly by 0.9% in our total production, down, misquoted, down by 0.9%. Mission was down slightly as well at 2.2% in comparison to the previous year. Looking at water, Abbotsford's water was up by 4.6% in Mission as well. Similar trend, 3.1%, just to give you some background on how we're doing. So to conclude the report, it's recommended that the Abbotsford Mission Water Sewer Commission approve the following percentage splits for the allocation costs for the operational water, sewer, and non-DC related capital expenditures. Those numbers again, sewer for Abbotsford is 81.54, Mission 18.46, Abbotsford 78.5, and Mission 21.5%. And that concludes the report. If there are any questions for me.
Thank you. We do have a recommendation on the floor, moved by Mayor Siemens and seconded by Councilor Gibson. All those in favor? Thank you. All those in favor, thank you very much for the report. Finished. Thank you very much. Let's move. Okay, the next item is 6.5, the draft 2023 year-end financial statement unaudited. Jimmy Chan. Jimmy?
And Sabrina.
Sabrina, okay, Sabrina. Thank you. Go ahead.
Chair. So today I'll be presenting the unaudited 2023 year-end financial statements. So overall, the combined activities for water and sewer for both operating and capital are within the approved plan for the year. However, there is an unfavorable variance in water operating of $534,000, and sewer operating has a favorable variance of $1.3 million. Beginning with the water operating statement presented in Appendix A, the unfavorable variance in water is mainly due to unanticipated repairs and maintenance costs that come up throughout the year. We are over by $797,000 on the maintenance line. These costs are not expected to be reoccurring and are one-time costs that were incurred in 2023. Further, treatment and disinfection costs were up due to the increased use of wells and increased chemical costs, resulting in $122,000 unfavorable variance on that line. Lastly, these are offset by a favorable variance of $365,000 in water conservation, which had less spending than budgeted in the water efficiency programs due to vacancies. Moving on to Appendix B, on the sewer side, there's a $1.3 million favorable variance. Disposal fees were higher than anticipated by $473,000 due to a one-time customer. Industrial extra strength charges were higher than anticipated by $274,000. And this is due to the actual extra strength volumes during the year being higher compared to the budget, which can be difficult to predict. The main variance to note under expenditures is in general services, which has a favorable variance of $310,000, which is mostly due to lower salaries due to vacancies and outfall monitoring not occurring this year, as there were not enough resources to initiate that program. Over to Appendix C, capital spending for both water and sewer is within the approved budget. The water capital budget was $24.5 million with total spending of $5.8 million, and those projects with spending have budgets of $18.1 million. I will highlight that a transfer was made of $200,000 from the joint water contingency budget, as additional funding was required for the ICCP system repairs project. Onto Appendix E, the sewer capital budget was $30.9 million with spending of $5.5 for the year. Those projects with spending had budgets of $20.2 million. That concludes our report for the 2023 year-end financial statements. Any questions?
No. Any questions at all from anybody on the floor? Anybody have a question? Councilor Davies, go ahead.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask questions on the effluent outfall monitoring and the engineering studies that aren't happening because of resourcing. What's the impact of these plans falling behind as in the synchronization with the overall master plan without resourcing? Is this, how is this being addressed, and what's the projection looking forward?
Yes, through the chair. And so I believe there is a plan to fill that vacancy for 2024, but perhaps some of my colleagues from engineering would like to address that one.
Through the chair, yeah, that will be under the role of a senior drainage and wastewater engineer for the treatment plant, and that work will be undertaken by that role specifically. But in the interim, We have been able to move forward with the study as of actually fall of last year. We were anticipating it to start earlier, but because of resourcing, it shifted our schedule a little bit. But given that it's a 3-year long-term monitoring program, we are still okay, and we have communicated that with the province as well, and there was no issue.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? No other questions. Okay, we'll now move on to the next report, which is the carry forward, the 2024 Financial Plan Carry Forward Amendment, and there's a recommendation to go with it as well, and you're going to provide that as well, Sabrina.
Yes.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Chair. So our next report is on the 2024 Financial Plan Carry Forward Amendment. Carry forwards relate to projects from 2023 that are still in progress at the end of the year. We take the leftover budget for that project and add it to the 2024 budget. Beginning with operating carry forwards, we are proposing a carry forward of $17,000 for water and $102,000 for sewer. For capital carry forwards, we are proposing $19.2 million in water, which will bring the amended budget for 2024 to $36.2 million. And we are proposing $24.8 million in carry forwards on the sewer side, which will bring the amended capital budget for 2024 to $31.8 million. And that concludes our report on carry forwards, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions? No questions. Can I have a mover for the recommendation that we have that the 2023 carry forwards as outlined in the report be recommended for approval by the City of Abbotsford, City of Mission, Council as required, moved by Councilor Workington and seconded by Mayor Siemens. All those in favor? Thank you. Thank you very much for reporting. And we'll now move on to the next item. I think Nathan Coney is going to give us introductions, and this is the state water restriction update, item 6.7 on page 67.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, the next report is from the city's senior water engineer and provides the committee with the noted update. The proposed measures are based on best practices and will better position the regional water supply to respond to droughts and other impacts of a changing climate that we've been experiencing over the past few years, minimizing adverse economic impacts on the two communities. I'll now turn it over to Mr. Fratian to walk the committee through this report.
Thank you. Good afternoon. It's my pleasure to present the stage water restrictions update. Let's see here. The agenda is as follows. The purpose of this report is to recommend adoption of proposed updates to the staged water restrictions described in bylaws for the two communities and to update the associated enforcement practices. Briefly, this slide provides a high-level summary of our demand management efforts, with the general program represented on the left-hand side there, and in the middle column representing our, shall we say, drought response plan, which is the three initial stages of our seasonal temporary water restrictions. The rightmost column represents our emergency condition, in which or stage 4, where we are in a situation where we have to ration water. So it's important to emphasize that this mainly pertains to stages 1 through 3. The context, we've learned a lot in the last few years. It's been a very challenging last few years. We had a heat dome in 2021. It's hard to imagine I'm saying this, but last year was a drought of record. And I think it's reasonable to anticipate that the next 10 years will be more challenging than the last 10. So this is part of the evolution of our demand management program. Again, context is we use these restrictions to control or to limit peak water demand. And this allows us to defer expensive capital expansion to future, and to importantly avoid that stage 4 scenario that happened last month in Edmonton, actually due to technical failure. The whole city was on a stage 4 for 4 days. This is codified in our respective bylaws, and this is just simply a review of the main elements that we are referring to when we talk about our current update or refinement to the restrictions themselves. Let's see there. The discussion. The proposed updates include a refinement to the initiation, escalation, and termination of the seasonal temporary restrictions. Right now, they start automatically at stage 1 on May 1st, and they end September 30th. Last year, we had to extend it for a precautionary measure, shall I say, beyond September 30th. These are arbitrary dates that have no bearing to actual conditions, so we want to add some flexibility to allow decision makers explicitly to initiate, escalate, or terminate stages based on prevailing conditions and other factors. Similarly, we would like to disaggregate our customer categories. And there are several reasons to do that. One of them is to allow us to focus, the whole purpose of these restrictions is to curtail predominantly outdoor discretionary use. We know that the majority of that resides with residential lawn irrigation. And what we don't want to do is to impair other activities in the community, specifically business activities, cultural activities, recreational activities, and so on. So we can, by disaggregating these categories, focus really stage 1 where the impact is greatest and minimize adverse impacts to the community through more severe restrictions. So the focus is on, it has been and will be on residential lawn sprinkling and to reduce it. And lastly, 2 more points rather. We need to change our enforcement practices in order for these restrictions to have greater impact. Currently, we provide a door hanger, the first instance of the violation, then we provide a written warning, and then finally we issue a fine. Last year we gave no fines, I believe, in Abbotsford, and I can't recall if there was one fine.
One fine mission.
So another thing we'd like to do is to add explicitly some guiding principles for these restrictions. And the reason for that is that in many instances, and we anticipate in the future this will happen again, there will be specific circumstances which we hadn't considered. Our bylaw can't cover every conceivable scenario. And all we have currently is the phrasing outdoor discretionary use to guide our decision making. And what we're going to do is, and what we've always done, is to consider rationally why we would restrict one use over another. And essentially it boils down to prioritization of beneficial uses. So that would be written in there as an aid to decision making in the future. So our public education remains the focus. The last thing we want to do is rely on enforcement. So education, as was mentioned previously, will remain the focus. And there's various ways we can build on what we've done and improve it. And there's a communication plan in development that incorporates various outlets. There is a budget for an advertising campaign to announce these potential updates should they be accepted. And the communication plan includes these various tools and media. The recommendations, to reiterate, is that Abbotsford Mission Water and Sewer Commission, that the staged water use restrictions and other proposed changes in the respective bylaws be implemented for 2020, for this year, and that the enforcement of violations be refined as mentioned. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your report. Nathan, do you have anything to say, or do you want any questions from anybody before? We have a recommendation on the floor. Go ahead, Councilor Worthington, your question.
Yeah, I'm interested in the intersection between lawn sprinkling, which is the biggest, you could say, non-essential use of water, and chafer beetle infestation. So we're seeing a lot of lawns being destroyed by raccoons and birds that are pecking away at the lawns. You see that damage all over the place. People will be motivated to repair their lawns probably. And so my question is, under the communications, like, what are the best ideas about replacing what we've always done with lawns with something else? Are we encouraging people? Are we getting the education out there? An example might be, if you contacted the top landscaping companies in Abbotsford, or Mission, do they even know what is a good alternative to the regular lawn that's always been planted? And that's not necessarily artificial turf, and it's not necessarily gravel, like something that looks like lawn but isn't. I'm not a landscaper, I don't know, but is that part of our communications thinking here? You said you're going to come back with some more ideas about that, so
Yeah.
a rather long question, but there you have it. You can sort it out.
Go ahead, through the chair. Yeah, thank you. So what you're referring to in the water conservation world is referred to as landscape transformation. That is one of the elements of the water conservation efficiency program. There are alternatives. They go by various names. There's various philosophies. A very common one in the Western United States. I don't know if anybody here is familiar with the book Cadillac Desert. It was a classic book about water in Western U.S. But Denver Water started something called the Xerscape. They coined the term. And it's caught on quite a bit throughout Colorado and the rest of the Western United States. It is used here. Kamloops has a whole page on their website for it. That's one example of a drought-tolerant lawn replacement. There are others. And that's something that we are promoting. We do have a rebate program for native plant species. So we have, as part of our existing program, a landscape assessment rebate with the option of incorporating native plants. That's another example. So there's the Xerscape approach. There's the native plant. I mean, lawns are what people want their land to look like. But then you don't have to go far to see what the land actually wants to be. And so there are ways that incorporate that. Yes.
Go ahead, thank you.
I was just
Go
gonna say,
ahead.
through the chair, to Councilor Walkerton. So there are a couple other options for Schaefer Beetle as well. So one that's Nate has presented is changing it from lawn grass type to a Xerscape or desert, something that doesn't use as much water. For nematodes, though, there are pesticide applications available. They usually go in the springtime. There's also a natural, sort of a more non-pesticide system, which is called, for Schaefer Beetle, there's also nematodes that are warm, that gets mixed with water and sprayed in spring. So if that application is done or the pesticide application is done, there's likelihood of a destroyed lawn in the summer is less. So there are other preemptive methods available too. I think if we're going to go ahead and put that communication out, we'll probably look at some other options as well and combine it as a one holistic communication.
Go ahead.
Sure. So to Pardeep's comment, we are recommending as part of the revision a specific mention of biological controls for Schaefer beetle. It will be in there.
Yeah.
You've seen it. So there is that. There's a biological control, and that's consistent. That's something I wanted to mention. I didn't. And that we took from Metro Vancouver's approach, and the revisions that we are proposing will currently. If someone said stage 2 in Coquitlam and stage 2 here, they are different. Our revision will align our stages with our larger neighbor to the west. Something I wanted to mention previously.
Thank you, I saw that again. Go ahead, Councilor Gibson.
Well, I think this is really good that we're being proactive and good documentation. This goes back a little bit to my earlier comment about where do we get our water from. I would like to see some, maybe as one councilor, I'd like to see some personality to this, rather from so it's amorphous. Like this city is run by taxpayers. It's that they run the city through the councils. That's why we have elections. So rather than having some amorphous announcement from high on high, I would like to see ideally, and I don't know what the committee thinks, I'd like to see the chair on behalf of the committee make the announcements. We have a committee. It's populated by people who are elected. The public needs to buy into this model. If they know it comes from a democratic ideal, I think they're going to be much more supportive rather than some amorphous, announcement, something like BC Hydro announcing something. We're the government closest to the people value local government. And so I'm requesting that when we make the official announcement, that the chairman make it on behalf of the committee and representing both councils. That's my suggestion.
Just appreciate the thought, but I think what I would say to that, if I could respond to that, is that I think that we have communication department within each city that do carry out communications at various levels. And I'm satisfied with that communication point. I believe that the city of Abbotsford communicated, am I correct in saying that, Nathan, that there is a communication mechanism within the city that they would send out, and also we would send out our communications through your department, right? Am I correct? We don't need it.
Well, yeah, yes, I'm aware of that, yeah.
Respectfully, through the chair, I think the general idea, I think is a great one, and it isn't unprecedented to have some sort of public oriented body that will at least vet these changes and so on. So but in terms of like messaging, I think I would defer to the chair.
Yeah, I don't, I would, if that is the wish of the committee to do that, I would certainly be willing to prepare myself. I know that we had this conversation with our waste management. We were saying that maybe we need to put a face to the waste management promotion because we were having concerns about waste management. So I'll leave it to the city staff to make that determination as to how they want to work through that. I don't want to interfere with the communication process of the place now. So, Gabriel, do you have any thoughts?
Chair, I'm just going to add to that, while the chair of this committee, you notice that in your recommendations, you're making recommendations back to each city council to adopt those things. This board doesn't have the decision-making and face that you may have seen in other, like in the US and other places. So from a governance perspective, I totally agree with staff. It's like this needs to come from city council, and both cities do this in different ways. So bit of a different perspective on governance.
We may start through the mayor's office. We may do that. We may set up communication to our particular communication staff to do a presentation to our community, and it may be done here as well through your community, through the mayor's office. But I think at this point in time, we'll leave it as you've indicated. Each city does it differently through their bylaws. And like I said, we've already enacted something that we're looking at for waste management through the city. We're both part of that. But we felt that necessary to do that.
Okay, well, I appreciate that. I just want it to be something with a bit of personality rather than sort of top-down announcement. Maybe the mayors have to be involved. I don't know. That's my only request. So many of the announcements come up these days, and they sound so bureaucratic and so prescriptive.
Yeah. Well, I think we're getting to understand that through our communication. They're helping us better prepare for those kind of things. I know, like I said, through waste management, we've recognized that we need to be looking at doing that, and there's some other opportunities. We've done that in our city through other mechanisms, but we work through our communications department. They say, we'd like to set up this thing. You people need to be the face of that. So I'd like to do it to our city, and I'm sure City of Abbotsford can do likewise if they choose to do so. I would appreciate it that way. So, okay, we have a recommendation to move forward then. Go ahead, Councilor.
Mayor. I'm going to move the recommendation.
Oh.
I don't think we've moved it yet.
No, that's what I was going to say. We'd like to move the recommendation of state water restriction update and to move forward on to bring it back to each of our councils for changing the bylaws, updating the bylaws. We have a mover in Mayor Seaman, seconded by Councilor Workington. All those in favor? Thank you. We will now, thank you for your report. Appreciate it very much. We'll now move on to, we have to go motion to go into closed. And we have a recommendation to move into closed. That the March 14, 2024 Joint Service Committee meeting be closed to the public to consider matters related to the following section Community Charter 1991.K. So I have a motion to move into closed, moved by Councilor Gibson, seconded by Councilor Workington. All those in favor? Thank you. We're now going to go into closed. We'll just take a few minutes for people to clear the room and we'll move to close. Correct?